please.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There is no fairness to fate, no right to good fortune. New life is a miracle and great health is a blessing. Now, I don't normally, Madam Deputy Speaker, speak from a text, from a script, as you know, having known me since we both entered the House in 1997. But the subject which I wish to address today is technical and it is medical. It is highly significant, and given that the Department of Health is one of the few departments I haven't served as a Minister, I thought I'd better stick to the script. Madam Deputy Speaker, spinal muscular atrophy is a genetically inherited neuromuscular condition which results in the irreversible damage of motor neurons and progressive muscle wasting. It is a complicated and often debilitating disease linked primarily to genetic mutilation in the SMN1 gene. There are three types of SMA. The age of onset and severity of symptoms can vary considerably. Many sufferers will experience extensive disability, and without early intervention, numerous lives are damaged and indeed cut tragically short. I know all of this because of my young constituent, 12-year-old Ray White. But there is hope on the horizon for Ray and other sufferers. The first dedicated treatment, Spinraza, offers hundreds the possibility of an improved quality of life. Clinical trials have already demonstrated the enormously exciting potential benefits of the drug, delivering meaningful improvements to the motor neuron function of patients. Whilst individuals with SMA have the SMN2 gene, they lack the SMN1 gene, leaving them unable to produce the full-length proteins which work effectively within the body. Spinraza has been developed to address the absence of this survival motor neuron protein. Its synthetic antisense oligonucleotide acts as an enabler, allowing the SMN2 gene to produce full-length protein, thereby alleviating the symptoms of SMA. Thankfully, the administration of Spinraza is via an already established procedure known as the intrathecal injection and injection to the spinal canal. This procedure is always performed under the direction of a healthcare provider experienced in administering lumbar punctures, with patients sedated or under a general anaesthetic. The promise of this drug and its potential benefits to those who suffer cannot be underestimated. Families of children who have received the drug often report noticeable, profound improvements from the very beginning of treatment. Indeed, during the clinical trials, the monitoring committees on rare occasions, as you may know, Madam Deputy Speaker, say it is no longer ethical to treat people with a placebo. And such was the case with this particular drug. It proved so effective in clinical trials among children with SMA type 1 that they were stopped early to enable all the children to access the drug as quickly as possible. Positive signs have also been observed during trials for treatment of other types of SMA, resulting in significant improvements in motor function for children with SMA type 2 and 3. In April 2019, a 3-year study of 28 children aged between 2 and 15 showed remarkably improved outcomes compared to the natural progression of the condition if left untreated. In particular, a 2-year-old child with SMA type 2 gained the ability to walk independently after receiving Spinraza, while 2 children with SMA type 3 who had lost the ability to walk before taking the drug regained it during the study. One can only imagine, Madam Deputy Speaker, the value in the restoration of ability for those children and the joy of those that love them. Moreover, a clinical trial is ongoing in pre-symptomatic infants with genetically diagnosed SMA who are considered to be likely to develop SMA type 1 or 2. As of July 2019, children treated with Spinraza continue to achieve motor milestones that are unprecedented in the history of the condition, including 100% of children sitting without support and 88% walking independently. Crucially, trials have shown that the earlier patients start the treatment, the greater the benefit. All this considered, in as much sadness, we must reflect on a less than desirable state of play now. Not all those who suffer from SMA have been able to access this pioneering treatment. Indeed, there has been a great deal of confusion surrounding eligibility. My colleagues, my right honourable friend, recently I think, friend from North East Somerset, and the honourable members from Northampton South West and Bristol East have raised touching testimonies from their own constituents facing similar challenges to Ray White. I was touched when young Ray's mother, Tanya, came to meet me and offered the moving description of her elation at the original announcement by NICE and NHS England promising that Spinraza would be made available to all. Perhaps it would be helpful at this juncture, Madam Deputy Speaker, if I said a word about how new medicines are approved. There are two stages to this approval process. First, the MHRA tests their quality, safety and efficacy. Quality in respect of their purity, safety in respect of possible side effects, and efficacy meaning that they do what they're supposed to. This is a well-established 50-year process, recognised, robust and reliable. Subsequently, NICE, in a much newer process, examines in tightly populated clinical conditions the cost-effectiveness of making the drug available to a wider population of relevant sufferers. This is, in essence, a matter of health economics, with NICE measuring the drug in question's capacity to add what are called quality-adjusted years. But the problem with that process, that formula, is that it is too crude to effectively distinguish in what I might call human or social terms between treating a 12-year-old little girl like Ray or a 60-year-old man like me. In practice, efforts end with a balance being struck between efficacy and cost-effectiveness in the form of a managed access agreement. And indeed, in the case of Spinraza, such a managed access agreement was released, revealing that potential patients will have to fulfil a set of access criteria to get this life-changing treatment. Well, as you can imagine, that caused panic and pain for those families who, having had their hopes raised, then had them dashed, as they realised that many would not, in fact, be given access to the treatment. I will happily give way.
I remember for giving way. And it's just so cruel. My 18-year-old constituent, Jake Ogbourne, they had a party to celebrate the fact that he would have access to Spinraza. And there was no mention of eligibility criteria. And then suddenly he was told that he wouldn't be eligible because he hasn't been able to walk in the last 12 months. He lost his ability to walk about 18 months, 2 years ago. And I raised this at Prime Minister's questions. I got a response back that basically told me what we already knew, just setting out the rules on this. And I do think it is, as I said, it's immensely cruel for an 18-year-old to be faced with a decision like that.
Yes, the condition, as the Honourable Lady suggests, is often degenerative. In the case she's described, and she's not the first time she's raised it, as I said earlier in the House, it can leave a young person who would normally develop, as we all did, with essentially arrested development or even worse, declining capabilities. And indeed, that's happened to my own constituent in the same way. She will know that following strong advocacy by families of SMA patients, Muscular Dystrophy UK, Treat SMA, SMA UK and many clinicians, NICE and NHS England have subsequently made amendments to the Managed Access Agreement. And whilst amendments are far from unwelcome, the disappointing truth, however, is the new criteria will still exclude some SMA patients desperate for treatment in the way the Honourable Lady and others have articulated. The intensely difficult battle fought by SMA patients has highlighted deeper flaws in the system. Families report feeling they've been pitted one against another, as advocacy groups are forced to decide whether to push for wider accessibility and, as a consequence, risk delaying treatment for those eligible, or alternatively, take what's on offer and exclude a minority of the SMA family. Madam Deputy Speaker, life can be intensely difficult. All of our bodies are complicated and vulnerable, intricate and fragile. We are regularly reminded, aren't we, that they can go wrong in a multitude of hard-to-understand ways. You know, I've argued many times in this House that a society should be gauged on how it cares for, it protects, it promotes the interests of its most vulnerable members. I will happily give way.
While securing this really important debate, I too have a young constituent, Sam McKee, who has SMA type 2, the issue is that I think the drug, and I hope the honourable member agrees with me, whatever has happened so far, we need to know that NICE will look at the fact that the drug can halt further deterioration. As the honourable member said, you know, we're all weak mortals, but if it's halted, then people can have some quality of life, whatever type of SMA they have.
Exactly. And that's why, in the exciting conclusion to this speech, I shall be demanding suggestions. But I think they're demanding because of the demands of those that need this drug, not because of any particular interest I might have in this beyond a passion to ensure that my constituent and others like her get what they need so desperately. And I happily give way to the Honourable Lady.
I'm really grateful to the Right Honourable Gentleman for bringing forward today's debate. And we've had many debates in this House about the procurement of drugs. And I've been working with health economists at the University of York who are leading in this field, and they very much recommend the model now being adopted by Canada around a national rebate scheme. So it actually takes away some of this tension that we seem to return to time and time again about cost. Isn't it a way forward that the government should at least explore that?
He had the great pleasure of shadowing me in the Department of Transport, and I've had the greater pleasure of listening to her on so many subjects, speak with such knowledge, understanding and wisdom. And once again, she's shown all of those things today. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Government and the new Prime Minister must do as much as they can to ensure that those with rare diseases have every chance possible to live the very best lives they can. So here's exactly what to do. First, as Spinraza has been shown to be both safe and effective, the NHS should provide the treatment for all those who would benefit from it. Secondly, in addition to making Spinraza available for all, the Minister should set up a rare drugs fund, similar to the successful Cancer Fund, to ensure that those battling debilitating degenerative diseases are supported at every stage of their journey. And third, I ask the Minister to implement an immediate review of the criteria used by NICE to determine access to new medicines. We all want to do the right things. I described earlier what I said was a too crude approach. These things develop, they metamorphosise. This is a chance to look again at how we can administer treatment to have the best effect to those in the greatest need. Hegel said, Madam Deputy Speaker, life has a value only when it has something valuable as its object. And Joseph Chamberlain said, in great deeds something abides. Well, there is no better great deed, no more noble object, no more abiding purpose than the care for those in the greatest need. So I ask this Minister to make her abiding object a war on want, a campaign against suffering, a crusade for those in pain, Madam Deputy Speaker, nothing less will do.
Minister Seema Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and what a pleasure it is to speak in this final parliamentary debate of what has been an historic and tumultuous term for all of us. I'd like to congratulate my right honourable friend on securing this debate, and such a timely day as well, because we have had news on Spinraza just in the last 24 hours. My right honourable friend outlined very movingly the symptoms of spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA, and it has been raised in this House before. I see the Honourable Lady in her place, the Honourable Lady for East Ham, Honourable Lady for York Central and North Tyneside are particular champions. It's a terrible disease. It can have a real terrible impact on the children suffering from it and their families and their wider communities. And we in the department know how very important it is for them to be able to access effective treatment. Now, it is a rare disease. It affects around 100 babies who are born each year, and it estimated that it affects between 1,200 and 2,500 children and adults in the UK. Until recently, there weren't actually any licensed treatments for it, so the condition had been managed using nutritional support, physiotherapy and social care. But Spinraza, which my right honourable friend has outlined, has been licensed across Europe for the treatment of SMA since 2017, and it is very effective. However, it is extremely expensive, and it has been undergoing assessment by NICE to determine whether it can be as an effective use of NHS resources. And what I would say to my right honourable friend, in terms of QALYs, they do take account of wider costs, so not just physical costs but social care costs. And there is no currently, as far as I'm aware, no quantitative evidence different in terms of, he gave the example of a man in his mid-years at 60 and a child. However, and I will move on, I am going to go on to talk more broadly about the NICE process. But I'm really pleased that only yesterday NICE published its final guidance, and so this debate is very timely. This recommends the use of Spinraza for many patients with SMA through a managed access agreement, and it's been negotiated between NICE, NHSE and the manufacturer Biogen. This makes Spinraza available to the NHS at a discounted price, and it also, and this is very important, it sets out arrangements for collecting evidence on the long-term impact of Spinraza, because at the moment that evidence is quite immature. This managed access agreement is one of the most comprehensive deals in the entire world, and it brings Spinraza to one of the widest cohorts of eligible patients in any country. And it was signed and supported by Spinal Muscular Atrophy UK, Muscular Dystrophy UK and Treat SMA. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'd like to put on record my thanks and my tribute to all these organisations for the support they've given to patients and families with this illness. It's a very welcome development. It's taken hard work by all of them and flexibility from all parties to reach this point. If only all parties in all the debates I have to speak to on this matter were as flexible.
I wonder if the Minister might give way on that point very briefly.
Of course.
The Minister makes a good point about the managed access agreement and the amendments to it which she described. But the real issue here is, would Spinraza benefit every single sufferer? And if it would, it should be universally available.
Well, I know that there is an issue with some people suffering from SMA type 3, but I'm not the person who would make the decision on whether it was effective or not. That's why NICE is there. So children with the most severe form of SMA type 1 are already benefiting from treatment with Spinraza, and following yesterday's announcement, eligible patients with types 2 and 3 will begin treatment as soon as possible within the next 3 months. Now, I know that NICE has concluded that there's not sufficient evidence at this stage, and this is why we're still carrying on collecting evidence for the managed access agreement to cover some patients with SMA type 3 or any patients with type 4. And I realise how dreadfully painful this is for those who are not able to access Spinraza, and I would say that the majority of patients will be eligible under the Managed Access Agreement. I think that the parties to the agreement have agreed to keep the eligibility criteria for treatment under review during the 5-year term of the agreement, so it may be further extended in the future if more evidence of benefit emerges during the time. And NHS E&I have acknowledged that the inclusion criteria associated with the Managed Access Agreement could have been more clearly communicated when it was announced. Now, on the NICE process altogether, this is an important system. It makes independent, authoritative, evidence-based decisions, and this is really essential so that taxpayers can be assured that the price we pay for new medicines reflects the value they bring, and one that helps to ensure rapid access to effective new treatments for NHS patients. It has been going for 20 years, and it means that it's internationally respected, and what is important is that pharmaceutical companies, both established ones and new ones, who are developing these medicines for rare diseases, which take an awful long time, that they are based here in the UK and that they're brought to the market through the NHS very quickly. And this is something that the department is very, very keen to press on with. In terms of rare diseases, we do have a UK rare diseases strategy. It was set out in the NHS long-term plan, and genomics is a particularly important area that we want to innovate on, to have more comprehensive and precise diagnosis to allow patients to access the right drugs. So we are committed to that, and I would say that the NICE process has recommended over 80% of the medicines it has appraised and 75% of medicines for rare diseases for some or all of the eligible patient population. But of course these processes must evolve. They have to keep going, looking at developments in science, healthcare and the life sciences sector. That's why NICE keeps its methods and process updated through periodic review. That includes extensive engagement with stakeholders, including patient representatives, drug manufacturers and clinicians. I will briefly.
Has the Minister's Department given any consideration to the MAP Biopharma report that was looking at a way of how the appraisal process could make a fairer playing field for rare diseases? Was released earlier this year, and I think it's something that perhaps the Department was given access to look at.
Yes, the department has been looking at that, and I would say that NICE has recently initiated a review, and I can assure honourable members, and as I did when I was answering the urgent question on Tuesday, it will be both wide-ranging, will be carried out with extensive engagement with stakeholders, and I shall be keeping a close eye on it if I remain doing this job, and even if I don't. Now, this is a very, very important process, a very, very important debate. I want to thank my right honourable friend who always speaks so passionately on behalf of people who are sick, on behalf of the most vulnerable, those children who have no voice for themselves. I want to reassure honourable members that access to effective new treatments always be a priority for this government. And Madam Deputy Speaker, let me thank you very warmly for your service to us in the chair, and I'd like to finish by wishing all right honourable members and all of us who work here in the Palace of Westminster a very revivifying recess.
Thank you. The question is that this House do not